What's up, everybody? Welcome to Time Crunch. I'm here today with Josh Noel, the business, food, and of course, beer writer for the Chicago Tribune. Josh is also the author of my favorite beer book I've ever read, Barrel Aged Stout and Selling Out, Goose Island, Anheuser-Busch, and How Craft Beer Became Big Business. I memorized it for you, Josh.
Thanks,
And
and thanks for those nice words.
well deserved. And Josh just put out a piece in the Chicago Tribune on a topic I've been fascinated by for the last, I don't know, 6 months or so, on a new trend of low-cal IPAs. So I've had a chance to try a few of these, but Josh went ahead and tried 18 of them for us, perhaps so that we don't have to. But Josh, I wanted to turn this over to you and kind of lead things off with, how did we get to this point where low-cal IPA wasn't even a term at this point last summer, to having 18 of these at your disposal?
Yeah, well, I should point out they weren't all IPAs. They were
Okay.
18 low-cal craft beers, but of course the brewers are sort of leaning in the IPA direction. I
Right.
don't know the number offhand. I'm just off the top of my head. I'm going to guess 11 of the 18 were IPAs because
Mhm.
obviously that's where a lot of the sales are. That's where what people are interested in. The whole low-cal movement, I'm also fascinated by this. I had a lot of personal curiosity about this, and I interviewed a couple of the brewers who make these beers, and the thing, I mean, it's really no mystery. You just look at the sales figures, which you do and I do, and
Yep.
it's really all about Michelob Ultra Light, which has, big beer has been pretty much hurting for a long time, but Michelob Ultra Light and Anheuser-Busch brand really bucks that trend and just keeps growing and growing, 20% growth every year, which is just not what's happening in general for big beer and for light lagers. But that's the exception. And because it's a better for you brand, lower in calories, lower in carbs, and that just resonates sort of with where we are. It also explains some of the success of hard seltzer, or a lot of the success of hard seltzer, really. And craft breweries it's a struggle out there. You know that, more than 8,000 of them. It's really competitive, and these local craft beers aren't going to probably dominate the industry. I think these breweries are just looking to sort of carve a little niche out. And one of the brewers I interviewed was the brewmaster at Abita in Louisiana. He's been in that job for about 15, 20 years. And they came up with a really nice one called Hop 99. It's really light. It's, that's what you're going to get for 99 calories and less than 3 grams of carbs in a 12-ounce serving. And he said, we're just trying to bring in new drinkers. We're trying to attract people, who maybe want to graduate, so to speak, from Michelob Ultra Light. They want some more flavor, while also providing some maybe some new opportunities to drink a Abita for people who are already drinking craft, on like the really hot day when you don't want to drink even a 5.5% pale ale. Maybe you want to drink a 4%. But his point was that he's not looking to sort of reinvent the entire Abita portfolio over light craft beer. They're just trying to, carve out a niche and give and sort of expand the base. And there's a lot of competition at sort of that mid-sized brewery level right now. We don't see a lot of the smaller guys. They seem to still be doing their hazies and all that kind of stuff. But these mid-sized guys like New Belgium and Abita and Dogfish and so forth, Anderson Valley in California, they're the ones who are really going after this low-cal movement.
So almost like a new kind of gateway to craft this way, like lowering a low-calorie drawbridge.
Yep.
Instead of going the flavor route, a different way to kind of, what's the marketing lingo, different way to attack it.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that it's a lot more. These beers do offer a lot more flavor than a Michelob Ultra Light, and
Yep.
they're just, I think, objectively tastier. I mean, some of them just don't work at all, but the ones that do, uh, do. My point, and what I wrote in the article, is that to appreciate these beers or even like these beers or want to drink them, you really have to adjust your expectations. And if you pick up a can of that Hop 99 from Abita, you can't be holding it thinking, oh man, I'm about to open this IPA. Even though it says light IPA on the can, you got to be opening that can thinking, I'm going to drink a low cal version of an IPA. And once you sort of make peace with that, then I think it's a really well executed and refreshing beer.
So when you brought up Michelob Ultra, do you think that they're thinking of it as going after Michelob Ultra's massive volume, or the? And I don't think there's necessarily a black and white, right or wrong answer to this. It's probably like little bits of both. But like the way I think of these, why a lot of these breweries are creating these lowcal IPAs, I don't necessarily think of them as thinking, oh, we can get that Michelob Ultra volume. I think of them as thinking we need to have something that's a place for our existing customers to go if their health and wellness trends are, leaning more healthy. I want to give them something, as familiar as I can to what they've been drinking, but that is, advertising that lower calorie option. And that's why I think like a lot of these wisely kind of keep the same branding. Like you've got Two Hearted to Lighthearted.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the Jack family of the Firestone ones calling it Fly Jack. We don't have one at Revolution, but if we did, it was an IPA, it would have Hero in it, because Hero to us is how we quickly explain to someone it's an IPA. People just know, for the most part, if it says Hero, it's an IPA.
Light Hero. Do
yeah,
it.
or Hero Light. Yeah, not opposed. So yeah, I didn't know if you had any input, if you think it's just a healthy mix of both. Do you think they actually think these products, this is more my question to you, do you think they think these products can actually take meaningful volume from a Michelob Ultra, or do you think it's more of like following that path, but with their own existing customers?
Probably more of the latter, but I think meaningful volume from Michelob Ultra, probably not. I mean, that'd be sort of.
And I would say meaningful to the craft brewer, not meaningful as terms of the loss to Michelob Ultra. So
right. Well, in that case, I do think it's both. And I sort of dug through that again with that Abita brewmaster. I sort of put that exact question to him and sort of dove into both sides of that equation. And he said it really is both, that he still sees runway for converting Michelob Ultra light drinkers. That yes, you can have the same calories and carbs in a beer that is really inarguably more flavorful. It's just a matter of getting that trial. But yeah, he also it's both, but probably is a little bit more of trying to expand the portfolio for the current customer at the end of the day.
And you mentioned you were
just, go ahead. Oh, well, I was going to say that this whole thing may just disappear in a couple of years. Like Session IPA was the hot thing 4 or 5 summers ago. Those went away. And now they're sort of back in this different form. And will this stick around? Who knows? But it's just sort of the big experiment of 2020.
Yep.
And do customers want it? I don't think we really have any kind of clear answer yet.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that you were curious about this. Was your own personal curiosity the main reason you chose to write about it, or were you getting a lot of questions, interests from your readers about these?
I did have questions and interest from my editor. Actually, it's my editor's editor. So she's higher up. She's like the head of all features at the Chicago Tribune. And I was already sort of watching it. She actually brought it up to me a year ago. She said, I want to drink fewer calories and fewer carbs. She loves a good IPA. She loves Anti-Hero, I think is one of the ones that she mentioned. But she's trying to cut down a little bit. And the only one that was really on shelves that scratched her itch at the time was Daytime from Lagunitas. And I did have my own personal curiosity about it too. Like, could these beers be pulled off in a satisfying way? But so I started sort of nosing around on it a year ago, but there just wasn't enough in the market yet. But then, every week you'd read this was really that seeds were being planted last year. Goose Island put one out. Slightly Mighty from Dogfish came out, but it was clear that 2020 was really going to be the year that these brewers went all in on forging ahead with this lowcal craft thing. And then the time was right, because when I started looking around on Chicago shelves, which, as you know, is one of we're as competitive a market as anywhere. I found 18 of them, and then I've also tried another 4 or 5 that aren't available in the market just to sort of check them out. But yeah, it was clear that this was the movement was really afoot this summer.
So what were your, after tasting all these, what were your overall impressions if you had to kind of bucket them into a couple categories?
Well, one, I was sort of heartened by the diversity. There are a lot of IPAs. There are a handful of hazy IPAs, which I think is definitely not the way to go with these beers. Those are pretty roundly my least favorite. I think it's just trying to do too much. I think these beers need to be sort of lean and crisp, and hazy IPAs, they just don't work as lean and crisp.
Yep.
The best ones are not that, they're the opposite of that. Anderson Valley does I think they call it a nut brown. It's very, very dark, called Black Rice Ale. New Holland has a brand new one out that's super low calorie, super low carb. That's sort of a play on a wit beer. Of course, Pilsner and Lager is sort of the most obvious direction to go, and a lot of those work pretty well. And the IPAs are a little more hit and miss. All in all, I would probably, so of the 18, I broke them into 3 tiers of really good, basically paraphrasing here, but really good, good, and then just ones I don't want to drink again. And there were only 4 or 5 in the ones I don't want to drink again. So really, all in all, about 2/3 of those 18, under the right circumstance, if I'm standing in Doug Valicki's backyard at a barbecue, hint, hint, and you pull out a Slightly Mighty from the cooler and hand it to me on a hot day, I'll drink that. Yeah, it's good. It's a good beer. Really, it works for what it is.
Yeah, the 3 that I've tried are, and I went through, had a couple of each of these. I think the first one I had was Oney from Oscar Blues, and then I've had Lighthearted and, and Flyjack from Firestone. Firestone's one of my favorite breweries. That one, I didn't think there was anything that wasn't well made about it, but something about the hop profile I just did not like. To me, it was like very lemony, and and maybe it was because I was drinking it in January when it was 15 degrees outside, and I'm sitting next to like my frosted over window. Maybe that just like was a bad time to be trying it for the first time. I didn't like it. I gave it to my wife, and she absolutely loved it and pretty much drank the rest of it, and asked me if I could get that one again. And then as I've followed like feedback on threads, I see that one being almost the most mutually loved, and it was the one I liked the least.
Yeah, it was one of my least favorites too. And also, I didn't care for the hop character. I didn't. The word that came to mind for me wasn't lemony. It was more vegetal. I thought it was just sort of a flabby beer with more going on than it needed to. I prefer a little crisper, a little cleaner, more refreshing. Again, I think Flyjack is a hazy lowcal is what they're after there, and I just didn't think it worked either. But I also saw a lot of praise for it on the Twitters. But I'll put it this way: a handful of people who I think really know their stuff and whose opinions I respect also don't care for that beer, and everyone loves and respects the hell out of Firestone Walker. You have to.
Yep.
I was surprised at the degree to which I thought that one was a bit of a miss. What did you think of the other 2?
I loved Lighthearted. I think I went in with the right expectations that I was not looking for Two Hearted. If I was looking for Two Hearted, I would buy Two Hearted. I was looking for something that wouldn't fill me up or be as heavy. And that one delivered for me. I think the hop profile was pretty different from Two Hearted, but it was familiar enough that I've seen people say that this should have been named something completely different. And I mentioned this earlier, but I get the reason to want to kind of keep it in that family and make it look close enough to Two Hearted. I like that one. That's the one I'd be most likely to buy again, just being at the store, see it, grab it, and something I'd be happy to have in my fridge. One I liked as well. That's one,
Hmm.
you know, I don't know how quickly I'd be to rebuy it, but if I was at a party and saw that one, especially if I was driving home and wanted something light and I saw that in the cooler at a party, I'd grab that in a second. But it
Hmm.
was really easy to drink, you know, not mind blowing, but none of these are going to blow your mind. And that's what I tell everybody is like, don't expect to have your mind blown. Just you're looking for something you don't have to think about, but that has some of that flavor you're used to, but brings it down quite a few notches.
And
Kind of
that's the
what
uphill
these are for.
slog, I think, for these beers is adjusting those expectations. The one that I really liked, if I had to pick a very favorite, was probably Odell Brewing's Good Behavior, which just to me drinks pretty much like a fully realized IPA.
Yeah.
It's a little higher in calories and carbs than some of them, but it's still 110 calories and lower carbs than, certainly, for instance, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, or just like a normal regular beer. Um, but it's I thought that was just a great, that was sort of the way you feel about Lighthearted is the way I felt about that, which I did like Lighthearted. I thought it worked, but the Odell Good Behavior is the one that to me I would probably think about grabbing off a shelf all year round just to have as an option in my fridge.
Yeah, that'll be next on my list. It seems like all the breweries making these have something in common, and this is something that I wouldn't have thought of had I not, you know, dealt with this by working at a brewery. But they all seem to be, is this fair, at least like a mid-sized regional brewery, like call it at least a top 100 brewery in size in the country for
Hmm.
the most part. Part of the reason for that is I feel like there's a lot to explain to a customer, which makes having a carton for these instead of just like a pack tech holder, meaning all your messaging needs to be on the cans, which are going to be
Hmm.
faced all differently. It's very hard to display to someone what this is without the box. And the ability to put beer into boxes is very expensive. It's a big investment. Like we have like an entry level one at Revolution that's really slow. We couldn't put Anti-Hero in boxes right now with what we have. We'd have to spend another million plus, maybe $1.5 million just to be able to, at a reasonable enough speed, pack Anti-Air into boxes. So that like chops off 99%, maybe not 99, at least 95% of breweries in the country from having much of a chance. Now, it's not that they couldn't do them. They can put whatever on the can. It's just, it's very hard to explain what these are with just the real estate on a single can. And that's,
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. There's other reasons small breweries, it's probably in their best interest to avoid this style, I think. But that's one that's more just like operationally and also marketing driven. That's a challenge.
Yeah, a couple of the brands I was surprised, and actually two of my favorites don't even include the calorie count on the package, which I thought was strange.
Yeah.
Um, at least one of them is going to add it. So it seems like the industry is still trying to figure out how to communicate these beers in general.
Yeah.
Um, it also, I don't know the answer to how many of these small breweries have been playing around with it. I know Spiteful here in Chicago's thinking about it, but to them lowcal is going to be a little more. I think they're working on something that has 125 calories in it. Or actually, I think it's already out. They're just going to rebrand it in the
Okay.
lowcal sphere. So we might see more of these smaller guys try to figure out how to do it. My gut says that that's just not what a lot of people are looking for from the smaller breweries in general, and that it is sort of more a piece of the pie for the larger / mid-sized craft brewers who are trying to appeal to people on a lot of different levels, rather than with the going down the hazy pastry lane.
Yeah. And we've hit on this, but I was going to ask you, like, who do you think is buying these? And I definitely like to remind people that, you know, craft beer's inner circle, as I would call it, the people that are going on Twitter and talking about beer, going on Instagram and posting the beers they're drinking. Those are probably not the people anyone at these breweries is expecting to buy this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's people that are kind of shopping with their eyes at the grocery store. That's why again I point to the mid-sized and above breweries are the ones that probably have the best chance of making this a successful brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Michelob Ultra drinker is a pretty mainstream drinker, right? And the people who have responded to my article so far were my wife's 60-year-old cousin-in-law or whatever. She's related somehow. she texted me and said, "Oh, I'd love to try some of those beers you just wrote about in the paper."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a different customer who may be drinking Michelob Ultra light or hard seltzer already, and may not, but probably is not waiting on the latest Imperial Double Haze Bomb.
Yeah. And speaking of hazy, I agree that if I were doing this, I wouldn't want to try to call it a hazy IPA. I just think the people that care about that term and are going to go, oh, it's a hazy one, maybe I'll like this, are more likely to be disappointed because it doesn't taste like most hazy IPAs taste. It just has that slight, very slight haze to it that I've poured these in the glass and put my fingers behind the glass, and you can see the fingerprints on my fingers through the glass. Like, they're not very hazy. They just have like a slight gentle haze to it. So that's what I would worry about it. You might get people disappointed by calling
Yeah,
it that and set the expectation to something it really isn't.
I understand the impulse, but I think
Yeah.
it's sort of a square peg round hole situation.
Yeah.
Those things just don't work together.
Yeah. Well, let's end it with predictions. So where do you see this, the lowcal IPA going? And pick your time frame. Do you think these will stick around? Do you think some will, some won't, or you think they're going to die a quick death?
I do not think they'll die a quick death. I'll go some will, some won't. We've already seen some come and go. I think, like in a lot of things, the best brands will survive, and the ones that probably do the best job communicating to the ones that communicate well to their customers, have good brands, and I'll be optimistic and say, and have a good product in the can, a good beer, will stick around. I mean, the better for you space seems to be here to stay. I mean, Michelob Ultra Light has been anything but a flash in the pan. Hard seltzer, I think we can all say now, is not going away.
Yep.
This people want better for you. And after sort of taking a deep dive into these beers, I definitely see the attraction. Especially if it's a night where, I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And if it's a night where I just feel like I need to keep after the kids, but do want more than one beer, I'm very happy for one of those two beers to be a lower ABV, somewhat lower calorie. I mean, once I started looking at how many calories are in a lot of beers, it curled my hair.
Yeah.
It's incredible what's in what can be in a hazy double IPA or a big stout. So yeah, I mean, there's some, I understand the appeal for drinking at 110 calories, 120 calories, whatever. So I think they're going to stick around in some form or fashion. I don't think they'll take over the industry, but I think there is a place for them. And I think they will resonate with a certain customer. And it's really heartening, especially probably the most exciting part of it is that there are some good ones out there.
Yeah. The story I like to tell, and I agree with your take, mine is very similar. But I remember drinking buckets of Michelob Ultra when I used to live in Arlington, Virginia. And I remember going out with my friends, and in 2005, we would drink buckets of Michelob Ultra. That beer didn't blow up into a major brand for 10, 12 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's people say they got lucky. Well, they were also very patient with that brand, and they didn't just kill it when it didn't explode instantly. Like, that was a long build to get to where it is now. So my question, my whether I think a brewery will be successful or not, it's kind of how invested they are in maybe the long, slow build that it might take for this to become something. Or if it's not a home run in year one, are they just going to be like, just kill it? I could see that happening to some of these if the approach isn't like, hey, this might take years and years. And breweries also have to have a priority list of their own. And a lot of times the shelf space they're given isn't the chain saying, yeah, we want to have a porter, we want to have this. A lot of times it's just like them saying, what are your top 4? We're going to give you 4. What are your top 4 priorities? And you have to rattle them off. And if this beer isn't making it to the top of your list, it's not going to get the shelf spots, and then it's not going to do well. So you have to decide, are you willing to? And I think like Firestone, Bell's, and all them, I can tell just from where it's getting on the shelf that they took this thing, even though they might have 15 or 20 SKUs, they're jumping this new lowcal IPA to the top of their list. And I can tell you that's one of the reasons we don't have one at Revolution, is because we weren't willing to put it ahead of at least 5 of our brands, and then the success of it would be limited because the exposure it would get would be limited, and it just didn't seem worth it. So I think some breweries are gonna have that long-term outlook on it, and some will probably get impatient with it, and then we'll see a kind of a mixed bag of success based on how much they're willing to put behind it. That's how I kind of think of them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And some are definitely better than others. Like I would encourage people to take a look at the New Holland one. It's a good can. I think it has the number of calories right there in the middle of the can. It's good colors, and it's like 86 calories. So that's really an exceptional number. And then the beer inside the can is really pretty interesting too. And I don't know, what's New Holland. Why would anyone buy, in Chicago at least? They make Mad Hatter, right? I mean, nothing against Mad Hatter, but why are you going to buy Mad Hatter IPA in Chicago at this point? Something like Light Point just seems like a brand that can travel a lot better. So
yeah, makes
I'm
sense.
agreeing with you. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Josh, are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to put 2 minutes and 10 seconds on the clock, and you're going to do your best to get as many answers out as you can in that time frame. So the clock will start when I finish the first question.
Okay.
When you think back on the last 10 weeks, what was the beer you consumed the most of?
Oh gosh. Lowcal. I don't know. It's a good question. I know I'm supposed to answer quickly, but I'll just say Spiteful Alley Time.
What is your favorite industry social media account to follow?
I know I'm supposed to do this fast, but who's not a jerk? Whoever's not a jerk.
Who is the first industry salesperson in Chicago that comes to mind?
Current? You're talking for a brewery?
Yeah, or anything close to it.
Don Bishel.
What's the best beer you've ever had?
Ooh. I'll go with Nosferatu from Great Lakes in Cleveland in 1998.
What single beer frequents your refrigerator the most?
Allagash White.
What's a topic for another beer book that's at least crossed your mind?
Ballast Point.
If you could pick one brewery to start Chicago distribution, who would it be?
Russian River.
Name a beer writer who has had influence on you.
John Hall.
What beer style have you been surprised to see getting made more?
The dark lager surge of last year.
What brewery is the Chicagoland scene's biggest dark horse?
Ooh, I'll go Spiteful.
Name someone or some place where you get inspiration from outside the beer world.
Hemingway.
Perfect timing. We're out of time. Good job, Josh.
Thanks.
I had a feeling you were going to say dark lagers. That was when I wrote that question, I was like, oh, he's totally going to say that.
Yeah, I gave myself away. Too predictable.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for doing this. This was a fun conversation. I hope everybody learned a little bit and got some couple different perspectives on it. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
It's fun.
And thanks again, Josh.